I work on African sleeping sickness. Most people have never heard of African sleeping sickness. But once I tell people a little bit about it, I very often get this question: why do you work on that? I think what they mean is, why do you work on some random tropical disease that affects people halfway around the world from you? Why not work on something big, something like HIV or cancer or autism, something I've heard of, something that affects people I actually know? It's a fair question. To answer that question, I want to tell you a little bit more about this random tropical disease. African sleeping sickness is caused by a tiny parasite that infects your blood. You can see it on the left hand of the slide. They're the purple wiggly cells, and the little round cells are your red blood cells. You catch sleeping sickness by getting bitten by the fellow on the right hand of the slide. It's a tsetse fly. The parasite grows in your blood. It causes anemia and periodic fevers. Then it invades your brain. Things get serious. It causes seizures, psychological disturbances. It flips your entire day-night circadian rhythm around, which is where the parasite gets its name, sleeping sickness. Eventually, you fall into a coma and you die. Fortunately, for the rest of the world, sleeping sickness is only in sub-Saharan Africa. You can't catch it anywhere else. But when it hits, it can destroy entire villages. Imagine what it must be like to be that last person in the village to fall ill. You're running around, trying to take care of your family and your neighbors, while you yourself sicken and weaken to the point that you can no longer go for help and there's no one left to send. How quiet, how lonely your last days must be as you lay there suffering. There's no one to take care of you, and you're waiting. Maybe even welcoming that final loss of consciousness as you slip into a coma and you die. How awful. Why not get help? To be treated for sleeping sickness, you need to be in a clinic or a hospital. Many times, these are too far away. The distance is too far. The journey is too difficult, too dangerous. Many times people wait until they're far too sick and they can no longer make the journey. But let's say you overcome those obstacles and you get to a clinic. Yes, there are drugs that can cure you of sleeping sickness, but they are terrible drugs. Most of them would never get FDA approval because of the side effects, like neuropathy, anaphylaxis, organ damage. The worst of these is melarsoprol. The ARS in melarsoprol stands for arsenic. Yes, arsenic. They have to dissolve it in polyethylene glycol, which is the main ingredient in antifreeze. So melarsoprol is basically arsenic in antifreeze. This is what we're giving people. It's so corrosive, it dissolves ordinary medical plastic. They have to use glass syringes and special tubing in order to administer the drug. It also dissolves the patient's veins. And the infusions are said to be excruciating. It's a terrible drug. So the problem, one of the problems with sleeping sickness is that we need better drugs. We need drugs to be less toxic, more effective, easier to administer. And that's where I come in. I study this parasite and look for weaknesses that we can exploit to build better drugs. So drugs are a problem with sleeping sickness. But how big of a problem is sleeping sickness? According to the World Health Organization, in 2014, sleeping sickness killed somewhere less than 20,000 people. 20,000. How does that compare to other diseases like HIV or malaria or something like diabetes? In 2014, each of those diseases killed between 1 and 1.5 million people. Comparatively, sleeping sickness is small potatoes. Okay, how about a smaller number? 2,977, a little under 3,000. That's the number of people that were killed in the 9/11 terrorist attacks. I think we can all agree that those lives had meaning, and that fighting terrorism is a big problem. How about a smaller number? Let's take it all the way down to one death. If that death is your parent, or your sibling, or your best friend, or you, that one death is not a small problem. That one death is a big problem. So numbers are irrelevant, really. The importance, the smallness or bigness of a problem depends on your perspective. So often, we feel that we should only focus on the world's big problems. They are important. But I have just argued that all lives have value, even one life, and that the importance of a problem depends on your perspective. If that holds true, then the world's small problems need attention too. Small problems may be more solvable. And let's be honest, we don't know what small problem will turn into the next big problem. Just ask Stephen Foy and Andrew Hadow. These two gentlemen are entomologists. And in the early 2000s, they were working in Senegal, looking at how mosquitoes transmitted viruses. One of the viruses they were studying was this obscure little virus that mostly infected monkeys. Once in a while, it would infect a human, and they would get a mild disease. No big deal. What Foy and Hadow found was that this monkey virus could also be transmitted between humans sexually. They wanted to follow up on this new mode of transmission and study this virus's transmission further. So they applied for funding. They were denied. The virus was not important enough. The virus was not a big enough problem. So their research on it languished. In the meantime, this virus migrated out of Africa. It caused some epidemics in French Polynesia. It crossed the Pacific Ocean and invaded South America. And it set up shop in Brazil, where it caused its biggest epidemic to date in humans. Somewhere along the way, the virus acquired some new capabilities. It became more virulent, and now it causes birth defects, including microcephaly. Some of you now know what virus I am talking about. Zika virus was a small problem. Now, Zika virus has the world's attention. The President of the United States just asked Congress for $1.9 billion to fight Zika because it is on our way here. Zika is now a big problem. It is a big problem. So back to this question I get at cocktail parties. Why do you work on that? Why did I choose to devote my professional life to a small problem? And the reason is a theme that has kind of permeated throughout the talks we've heard today. Passion. It's a little cliched, but it is real. Passion makes the difference. Passion can change your perspective. During my scientific training, I stumbled onto sleeping sickness. In a very sciencey way, I fell in love. Today, as a researcher, I am fascinated by this parasite and its tricks. It is a worthy enemy. As a human being, my heart goes out to those who are afflicted by this terrible disease. They're some of the poorest, most forgotten people on this planet. Their lives have value. No one deserves to die from sleeping sickness. No one should die from sleeping sickness. So why not make it my problem? I have the passion. I have the skills to discover the parasite's secrets. I have a willingness and drive to contribute. I can make a difference here. My passion changes my perspective. Sleeping sickness is now my problem. It's my problem to work. It's my problem to solve. And hopefully, I'll get to see it solved, and I'll be a part of that solution. And then I'll get the privilege of having to choose a new problem. So my challenge to you is this. What's your problem? What keeps you up at night? What makes you dream? What inspires you? What terrifies you? What makes you burn with rage and injustice? Whatever that is, and it can be anything, that is your problem. That's your problem to work, and that's your problem to solve. Here's the beautiful thing. It does not need to be a big problem. Small problems are worthy. Small problems matter too. And your passion changes your perspective. And like magic, that small problem becomes your big problem, your big cause, your life's work. So I'd like to end with a quote by Mark Zuckerberg, who's the co-founder of Facebook. And this is what he said. He said, when I think back over the last 10 years, and I ask myself, why were we the ones to do this? I think what it comes down to is, we just cared more. We just cared more. Zuckerberg and his friends were passionate about a small problem. What is a fun way to keep up with my friends in real time using the internet? They didn't know that this was going to be the genesis of social media. They didn't know that it would transform how our society interacts in ways we are still measuring. Their passion helped them solve a small problem, but it turned into a really big deal. The world's problems, both big and small, are waiting for you. And if you choose to work on a small problem, I can guarantee you that you will change at least one person's life. But you just might change the world. So find your passion, pick your problem, and go. Thank you very much.